Welcome to We All Serve, the podcast featuring leadership lessons from and conversations with those veterans that have served in the United States Armed Forces. Meet your hosts, Robert Lewis, a proud enlisted veteran that served active duty in the United States Marine Corps. Hoorah! And Shalom, Klein, who is privileged to be an officer in the United States Army Reserve. Hoorah! They both agree. We all serve.
Hey, welcome to the 7th episode of We All Serve. Robert, I can't believe we're already up to episode number 7. Our viewers and our listeners don't know this, but I've been gone for the past few weeks. We've been rolling out episode after episode, some great conversations, amazing vets. But this is our first episode back in business, and we've got some great guests in store. Of course, our guest today, who we'll talk with and about in just a moment. But Robert, how have you been?
All is well, brother. And welcome back home.
Thank you.
I know you've been gone on duty, and I've been trying to hold the fort down in your absence. But you might have been physically not here, but spiritually you are. So, man. In spite of all of the COVID-19 news and all the different things going on in our world currently, this climate, I'm just glad to be back on another episode 7 of We All Serve, with another exciting guest. So excited to speak with him today. I do want to say that since we've been gone for 2 weeks, we've had some heavy losses in the world, I should say. C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis, who were civil rights icons for our country and really for the world. If you don't know, C.T. Vivian was a phenomenal minister, author, a close friend to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He also received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama in 2013. And then also Congressman John Lewis. Many people know him for his quote of getting into good trouble. He's a civil rights leader, served 33 years in Congress in the state of Georgia. He's also known for his marches in Selma in Alabama, actually well known, the Bloody Sunday incident, where the protesters stood off against the state troopers in Alabama, and he was almost critically injured. His skull was cracked. Wow. In that march, but he survived, went on to do great things in politics and so on and so forth, and continuously lead. So I just wanted to make sure we recognize those two icons for this episode as well. Shalom.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And we were just talking yesterday. It's because I've been gone for the past few weeks. It's so much has happened, and we haven't talked about it on the show. You and I have stayed in touch, and we've had some of these conversations. But it's important to be a lifelong learner, to continue to look up to people, read, listen. There's so many opportunities to do that, and just learn. We're all imperfect. We are all so imperfect. But as John Lewis said, it's good trouble. Get into trouble. Learn. Try things. I think that's what we are all about. I mean, our guest in a moment, certainly has done and continues to do some incredible things. I know you posted on Facebook the other day that you had your Marine Enlistment anniversary. So congratulations on that. And that's a huge milestone. And perhaps that was a little bit of trouble that you got yourself into, and it's for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that acknowledgement, man. And I know it probably hurt you to say that I went to Marine Corps boot camp, the best boot camp in the armed forces. No, but absolutely, man. I was just chatting with one of my Marine buddies, and he kind of reminisced and said, the day that he went to boot camp, the sentiment really was when you showed up was, what the heck did I get myself into, right? you're standing on the yellow footprints at MCRD San Diego, and everybody's screaming at you, and you're just kind of like, your world is completely changed at that point.
You're like, I did that voluntarily. Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. So but shout out to MCRD San Diego, Camp Pendleton, California, all my buddies in San Diego, Florida, New York. I've got vet buddies all over the country. But yeah, man, that was a historic moment for myself. So thanks for acknowledging that, man.
Of course. So, so guess what?
What's that?
Okay. Well, many of our listeners and viewers, and you know what, I'll digress for a second. Right now, you might be listening to this as a podcast on Spotify, on Google, on Apple. But shameless plug, look for We All Serve on YouTube, and on Facebook and Twitter. And you could actually get a link so you can watch this conversation as well. And that is so much more fun than just listening. So make sure you're liking us, following us, and subscribing so you don't miss a single episode. But many of our listeners or viewers, however you might listen, know that I love to travel. Haven't traveled in a long time now for the past 6 months because of COVID. And then prior to that, I was off for a year doing some of my Army responsibilities. But I've been on every continent. I've been to a lot of different places. There is one place that I have not been, that our guest has been. And, it might sound weird to say I'm jealous, but we'll get into that in just a moment. That place is North Korea. Place is North Korea. So, yeah, I mean, when I had this conversation with our guest, wow, my ears perked up, and so let's get into it. Robert, one more thing. Guess what?
What is it?
Our guest served in the Army.
I should have known. That's all right. This guy is great. He's accomplished. I like the guy. I've had an opportunity to meet him, but man, that Army piece, man. Yeah. There's something about that Army thing, but
what?
We'll give him pass.
Great minds think alike, made some good decisions in his life. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce our viewers, our listeners, to our guest, Jim Miller. Jim has an enormously accomplished record, including, as I just said, service in the United States Army, both in the 2nd Infantry Division in South Korea, 1st Infantry Division in Fort Riley, Kansas, 1st Armored Division in Germany, and he was also detailed to the White House Communications Agency in Washington, D.C. Right now is the Director of Corporate Security, and is in the process of rolling out a brand new book, Gut Punch: How Love Can Pick You Up When Life Has Dropped You to Your Knees. Jim, such a pleasure welcoming you to the program. Jim Miller, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Shalom. I really appreciate the invitation. Robert, great to meet you earlier as well. I'm very excited to be on your show.
Oh, indeed. It's great to have you, Jim. You have an incredible story of service, and really, as we say on the show, we all serve, and that's present tense. That's not something that you put on a uniform and then when you hang up that uniform, you're done. I know you're continuing to serve, and actually very proud you and I had this conversation. I know you continue to employ some folks in service, and I know that service is a big piece of who you are. So let's start at the very beginning, Jim.
Sure.
As we say in Mary Poppins, the very best place to start. So Jim, tell us a little bit about your background pre-military and your choice to serve.
I was, I think I'm a little bit older than both you guys. So grew up in the 70s, basically. And, like any kid my age, I think, when you look at popular culture at that time, the movies, were World War II movies and things like that. Some of my favorite movies when I was a kid was Kelly's Heroes, Patton, those types of things, The Great Escape. So the military was something that I always thought about, potentially doing with my future. And as I got a little bit older and got through high school, I joined in my junior year and decided that I wanted to go into the service. one of the biggest things, I did want to serve. I wanted to serve my country, the patriotism aspect. But I also wanted to see the world. And I thought, that was a really great way to see the world through the military. So, I grew up in the Chicago area, a suburb just south of Chicago called Dalton, near Calumet City, Dalton, just outside of the city. And we were born in the city, but grew up mostly in a town called Dalton. And, it was kind of a suburban, childhood, nothing remarkable, kind of normal family life. And, just thought that I would be able to see the world through the military. And I did. So went into basic training at Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama. And being from Chicago and being in Alabama in July and August for basic training was really interesting.
I bet.
Especially when you first learn that tents in the Army originally don't have floors, right? So you're living with everything that's on the ground in Alabama in the summertime. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Wow. No, I know Dalton very well, Jim. And
great.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. What high school did you go to?
Thorn Ridge High School.
Oh, nice. Yeah. All right, man. A bunch of basketball greats came from there.
They had a great basketball team. Mr. Duckworth, who was our PE teacher, his brother was in the NBA.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Oh man, you're in the neck of the woods, man. Around me, man. I grew up right outside of that suburb in the city, though, close 95th and Woodlawn, so over in that area.
Yep.
Yeah, man. So no, this is great. You know what? So you're kind of like me, man. When I joined the Marine Corps, except you went to the Army, but that's okay. We won't talk about that.
We digress.
No, but I also wanted to travel the world. I wanted to, go all these places that you always see on the news, that you read about, and so that was one of the motivations for me. And of course, getting as a 17-year-old getting out of Chicago. But so I'm curious, man. After you got into the service, you were there for how many years did you serve?
I served just about 10 years.
Almost 10 years, man. So after that, man, what was after your service there, and you realized, wow, this is you're obviously a service-minded person with all the great things that you've done. What led you to do your next endeavor after getting out of the Army? What was the motivation for you first to get out the Army, and then to go on what path?
So, my final tour of duty was at the White House, and that was a joint service agency that I didn't even know existed until I got recruited into it. I was serving in Germany at the time, and I actually went on leave back home to Chicago. My family had relocated back to the city, and I'd come back from leave, and my platoon sergeant is, "Hey Miller, the White House was looking for you when you're gone." I'm like, "Yeah, right. The White House was looking for me." And sure enough, they had done a recruitment campaign through Europe, and they selected me. And I think they just looked at records and looked at test scores and different things, and if you met a certain criteria and certain MOS and everything, then they wanted to talk to you and see if you were interested. So I met with them, and it was a really interesting. I've written, I like to write, as you alluded to, mentioned my book. So I've written a bunch of little vignettes about military service, and one of them is about the interviewing process for the White House. It was really interesting, the types of questions they ask you. They want to see if there's things in your background that somebody could use to exploit, because when you go there, you have a very high level security clearance, obviously, and they're trying to see if there's something in there that you're not talking about that somebody may want to exploit to get information from you. And generally they just try to see if you can handle stressful situations and things like that and triage things well. But it was really interesting. So I found out that I was going to the White House. So one of the, getting back to your original question about why did I leave the service? So I'd done several years there, went through the Gulf War at the White House, and the military was downsizing quite a bit. I don't know if you guys recall, but after that, there's this thing called, after the Soviet Union fell in 1991, there was this whole peace dividend discussion in Congress, and they're saying, hey, we won the Cold War. What are we going to do now? We don't really need this giant military. So they started the Army. From the time I went in the Army until the time I got out of the Army, they cut it in half, just about. So the Army went through a pretty significant downsizing. So there were some opportunities, so I decided to get out of the service at the time. And as we talked about in, my book, Shalom and I had the conversation, but I had some personal issues going on with my family as well that made it more attractive to get out of the service than stay in at the time, unfortunately. So I got out of the service, and my experience in the military, my MOS and the experience at the White House, but also just what the military teaches you, about how to, I always, obviously it teaches you how to be a leader, but I think most importantly, the very first thing in order to be a leader, you have to learn how to follow. You have to be somebody, and I don't mean that in a bad way, just blindly follow somebody, because obviously the military tells you don't follow an illegal order. But how to carry out a mission, and somebody gives you an instruction, an order, how to carry that out, how to carry it out to the best of your ability every single time. If you learn that, then you can be a good leader, because you understand what you're going to require of your soldiers and people that that work for you. So having those skills really helped me then when I got into the civilian world, excel. I started at the bottom in organizations, and it helped me excel and do well and grow in organizations. And that just helped me build, to where I'm at now and the position I'm at now.
So, Jim, I want to get back to the White House piece in a moment or two. But as part of your tour, you spent some time in South Korea.
Yes.
And I know you've been sort of all over the place. Sounds like you also have that travel bug. I'm curious if you've continued that post-military, but you have a fascinating post, I guess I'd call it. It's really much larger than a post that you shared with both of us, and we can share it with our listeners and viewers. But it's entitled "Inside the Hermit Kingdom: 5 Days in North Korea." Can you tell us a little bit about that experience in a place that most of us, like I said, I consider myself to be pretty well traveled. Most of us have never, probably will never experience in our lifetime.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I served with the 2nd Infantry Division at Camp Casey, and we were up near the DMZ, so we were there a lot. I actually have a member on my team member, Derek Caudle, who actually served on the DMZ and was, up there all the time. I was at Camp Casey, so I was near the DMZ, and we were up there, exercising a lot. So I saw South Korea. I saw the DMZ from the south, and I actually took the tour into Panmunjom and went into Panmunjom. So, you're technically in North Korea when you cross the line on the table in Panmunjom. So, just having lived in South Korea for a year and serving in the 2nd Infantry Division, I was interested with things that are going on the peninsula there. So later on in civilian life, I became a member of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. It's just it's a foreign policy group in Chicago that, they bring on all these guest speakers and different stuff and discuss foreign policy issues. So I met a gentleman there that had run travel into North Korea. And he actually, I believe at the time, was the only person that was running trips into North Korea. So I hooked up with him, and we developed it was really interesting because he had he ran tours into there, and for whatever reason, I had like a solo tour. So I got, because I wanted to do some additional things. I was really focused on the military aspect of it, because I wanted to see their military museums. I wanted to see military historic sites and stuff, which, North Korea is a military centric society. So they put almost all of their GDP, the small amount that there is, into the military. It's everything's designed about protecting the regime there, So that's why they develop nuclear missiles. That's why they pour all their money into the military. The nuclear missiles are for the external threats. The military is mostly for the internal threats, to keep the people compliant and things like that. So I was always interested in going to see North Korea. So that's why I took advantage of that opportunity and went into North Korea. When I was in the service, when I was at the White House, I got to go into the Soviet Union back when it was the Soviet Union for the last U.S.-Soviet summit with President H.W. Bush. So having seen the Soviet Union back then in 1991, it was really like stepping off of a plane onto a 1940s screen stage set or something. It was really unreal. I mean, it was like it was just unbelievable what it looked like back then, and I've heard the same of people that went into East Berlin from West Berlin. I didn't get a chance to do that when I was in Germany, but people said the same type of thing. So I was really interested to see what North Korea looked like compared to South Korea, because South Korea is insanely successful and very prosperous. And I really wanted to see what it was like inside North Korea. So that's why I took the opportunity to go there. And it met the it met that criteria. It was really a surreal experience.
And just to clarify for our listeners, this was roundabouts in 2008 that you went out there.
It was in 2008. Yeah, actually, I was in there during the 60th anniversary of the founding of the DPRK, and it was also the financial crisis was happening back here in the States. Yep. And Kim Jong-il, who was the leader at the time, went missing because he had a health crisis. So it was an interesting time to be there.
For many of us that have served, we, especially in specific MOSs and jobs, it's we're used to filling out those security clearance paperwork, the PSIP, as it's called. I could only imagine. It's good that you served prior to going into North Korea, because I could only imagine the red flags that would raise for the adjudicator or the investigator trying to get you cleared for a White House security clearance. Good thing you completed that, moved on, and then you went off to North Korea.
Yeah. So amazing. I don't think I'd be able to have the clearance now. And actually, I was on the deck of the ship that was captured in 1968, the U.S. Navy ship that's still actually on the Navy rolls, and all the crypto equipment's still there. I'm sure parts of it were sent to Moscow for evaluation and everything, but it really put me in the shoes of those sailors. Obviously not literally, but just seeing what was happening, and I really felt for those sailors that were there back in 1968, and it happened in January, so it's freezing cold. You're out there on the open seas, and the North Koreans started firing on their ship, and there was really nowhere for them to go, and they got captured. It was the USS Pueblo.
Wow. I mean, that alone, man, that just kind of that right there, you've got stories to tell. I don't know if you're going to have grandkids, but you've got some great stories. I know I read some of the stuff you sent this, man. I know that when you came back home to Chicago, you said you used to sip coffee or tea with your dad and have many, discussions, and you found out a lot of things that you couldn't really talk about. But I can only imagine working in the White House and finding out all of the threats that have come against our nation. That had to be, not only eye-opening, but a little jarring as well.
That's interesting, that you bring that up. People that serve, particularly if you serve at different, whatever that position is, where you have access to those types of information.
Right.
I just don't think that your average citizen realizes, what is up against the country every single day. I mean, this was, I served in the White House from basically January of 90 through almost the end of 1992. So through the Gulf War and everything that lead up to the Gulf War. And, you talk about the dismantling of the Soviet Union and all those fissile materials that were available to, they were trying to prevent terrorists from getting access to these nuclear materials that were, not necessarily secured all that well. So, I mean, you had all that stuff going on back then. And, I mean, there were terrorist elements that were trying to do bad things. And, that's why that article that I wrote, I was talking to my dad, and obviously I can't disclose any secret information or anything, but I was just, I told him I would be really surprised if something bad didn't happen in the next 5 to 10 years, if they can get their hands on those materials. And, they attacked, what was the first bombing at the World Trade Center? Was that 93?
1993. Yep.
Yeah. So that was 93. That was like, right after I got out. Yep. And if you don't think that they would have used a nuclear weapon instead of flying planes into the World Trade Center in on 9/11, of course they would have. They just weren't able to get it because we've people that in the military and different agencies are trying to prevent that every day. And it's a constant battle to maintain, to keep those threats from harming people here at home. And I just don't know that the average citizen realizes that that's an ongoing battle, and it's been going on for a very long time.
That kind of reminds me and leads me to, how people always say, the old school, they say, you know what, I know where I was when Kennedy was shot.
Yeah.
I remember where I was, when 2001, 9/11 happened. I was actually, I was supposed to go to work that day. I was laying in the house that I lived in at the time. I was laying in the bed, and the TV was still on, and I just saw one of the Twin Towers had smoke coming out of it, and I was like half awake. And I remember seeing that and kind of hearing, I don't even remember who the person was talking on TV, but it's like your eyes are opening up and you're seeing what would become of the new normal of things to happen. And I was reading your article, man, about, where you were and everything when that happened. And so, I mean, from your perspective, just speaking on how the world has changed since 9/11, do you think we're any better at protecting our country now than we were then?
I don't have access to the information that I had back then. Sure. I've got a lot of friends, and obviously we have conversations and things like that. I would like to think we are. I think the biggest factor there. I do security now for energy infrastructure. So we participate in some of the efforts to make sure that things in the homeland here are safe, and we can deliver energy safely and everything to folks and keep energy going. But I think from that perspective, the thing that makes us more safe than before is there's just a much larger collaboration of agencies and sharing of information than there was in the past. I think it was siloed much more in the past. I think certain people had information, because even if you look at 9/11, there were certain people that knew about us, very extently, to a great extent about Osama bin Laden, and people that knew about different plans to try to fly planes and use planes as weapons and different stuff. But the right people didn't have that information, and we didn't have the protections in place. And, I don't know, barring that type of an incident that was tragic, over 3,000 people killed and, massive chaos, would the American public have put up with what we've done with security at airports and things like that before then? If we had just said, hey, we really need to do this because, and we can't really tell you why, but we need to do this, would the American public have put up with that? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, look what people are doing about masks right now, so Americans like their freedom, right? So I don't know if we would have been able to put the measures in place without the incident happening, unfortunately. I mean, I just think human nature in some ways does that. I used to be amazed, you talk about working at the White House, we'd have these conference calls that would happen in the middle of the night. And, you'd hear about something happening out there, the tip of the foreign policy spear, our military, those tier 1 units and things, and some of the intelligence groups and stuff doing things, and, something may or may not have gone right or whatever. And we always had to be pulled in case the president needed to be pulled in and make a decision, or, something like that had to happen. So, that stuff's going on all the time. It was going on before 9/11, and clearly it's going on to a much larger degree after 9/11, with the Afghanistan and Iraq and different things. So I do think generally we're safer, but, that's just my opinion. I don't have any definitive information on that.
Sure. And wow. Jim, I know your upcoming book, I believe it's scheduled to be released in November of this year, is called Gut Punch: How Love Can Pick You Up When Life Has Dropped You to Your Knees. And you've dealt with quite a bit of hardship. And that was part of, as you alluded to earlier, part of the reason why you left your service. Yeah. Just general question. I mean, do you miss it? Do you miss the Army life? Do you miss your time at the White House? Do you miss serving? I want to clearly give the disclaimer: you continue to serve. We all serve. But do you miss your time in uniform?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah. I mean, I would have loved to, done a full career in the military. I enjoyed the military a lot. And, especially at the White House, you kind of got a little bit spoiled on, the access to people and things. I mean, I would have conversations with Colin Powell on the telephone. We'd have to bother him. He'd be in the garage tinkering with it. He lived on Fort Myer at the time. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and he liked to tinker with this old truck he had. You'd see him puttering around it on Fort Myer and stuff. And he'd like to work on cars on the weekend. And, you'd have to bother him to get him on the phone to talk to somebody, on a secure line. He had to go down to his basement, get on a secure line so he could talk to somebody. He was just an amazing person, and, one of my personal heroes as well. So. But yeah, so I absolutely missed, and at the White House, I mean, you were drinking from a fire hose of information. And, once you're no longer have that clearance and you no longer have that access, it goes away, because I'd sit at home and watch, like those morning shows on Sunday morning and things like that, sit in bed watching those news shows. And you could tell when somebody's lying because you heard them talking on the phone. You're like, well, that's not what you said to the president on the phone. That's interesting. So you really got to see that dynamic of what politicians are really like, behind the scenes, where it was more of kind of an old boys network. And then they put on the suit, and fight each other on television because they have to do that for their constituents. But behind the scenes, they were all, okay, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. There's a lot more of that. I don't know that that's going on nowadays, but that was going on back in the 90s. I don't know if it's going on nowadays with the devices.
That immediate aftermath of having just left, I'm sure you were just blown away by the things that you saw and heard, and probably just itching to be involved, not just to know more, because that's we all have that a drop of that, but to be able to do and serve and continue to contribute in some way. So you wrote this book, Gut Punch, How Love Can Pick You Up When Life Has Dropped You to Your Knees. Can you tell us a little bit, sneak peek? We don't want to share all the secrets, but sneak peek of what's included and what readers can look forward to.
Yep. So like I mentioned, I was serving at the White House and had to make the decision. My time in service was coming up. I had to make the decision to get out or stay in, and I decided that it was best for me to get out of the service. I was having some significant issues in my family, and my first wife had some actually had a personality defect that led to some mental health issues, like a bipolar disorder and things like that. So it became untenable to maintain a top secret clearance and have that situation going on at home and trying to manage that and keep my kids healthy and all that other stuff. So I did get out of the service. And, like you said, mentioning continuing to serve, my first job out of the military was working at a children's hospital. And boy, you talk about service, man, the doctors and nurses at Children's Memorial at the time. Now it's called Lurie's Children's in Chicago here, but worked at Children's Memorial as my first job. And my God, you talk about service, those people are incredible. And so I did try to continue that in the jobs that I've done post-military. But so the genesis of the book, I'm writing the book, I'm working with Tucker Max, who's a New York Times bestseller, and he runs this company called Scribe Media. And I'm working with them on the book. And he teaches you to find your avatar. Who is your perfect reader? Who are you trying to help with this book? And my perfect reader is the person that woke up next to his wife who passed away, who took her own life actually back in 1998. So I woke up, went to bed, a family man with 2 children, and woke up a widower with, single dad of 2 teenage, an 11-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy. So, going from the shock of that to being happy, healthy, and having a great family, and doing what I did with my life, I'm trying to distill down how I did that and show people that there's a path to go from that terrible, horrible incident and the grief and sorrow and sadness of that type of an incident to finding your happiness again and living a happy, healthy life. So through that, I found doing the work with that, and I worked with a woman named Erin Weed out of Boulder, Colorado, who does a lot of this type of work, trying to figure out how I did do that. I developed the process. I used the tools of love, which the 3 tools of love are understanding, compassion, and forgiveness. Really trying to understand a problem from many different directions, not just how you saw it, but, in the case of my wife's suicide, understanding, why she did that, what brought her to do that, and then developing compassion, not just for her. My God, I mean, how bad are things when taking your own life, you see that as your best option, right? I mean, how bad are you feeling then, and how bad is your situation? So having compassion for her and having compassion for me as well, and then forgiveness ultimately, forgiving her, forgiving myself for however I contributed to that, and giving yourself permission to move forward in your life and be happy and finding happiness and moving forward. So that's what the book is about. It's trying to take readers through that journey. And again, I'm not arrogant enough to think that my path is everybody's path, but it is a path. And I want to show people that path so that maybe somebody could find something in my journey that will help them get through a really traumatic incident.
No, I very much appreciate that, Jim. And I will say that the path that you're sharing is definitely one that will be familiar to some and hopefully many. You never know who you can help until you reach out. And I believe that, another story that you shared with us, as you spoke about addiction and mental health, I think that's more common than people would like to believe. I think we all, I tell people all the time, everyone needs counseling if you make it in past the birth of your birthday, right? You've been through some trauma, you've seen something that didn't quite gel or mesh right, and at some point there's some things that you have to deal with, mentally and sometimes physically, and it requires you to understand that. So in my family, myself, I'm a big proponent of counseling, knowing more about yourself so that you can grow as a person. But I really appreciate also that you're sharing the story of what your son experienced, and you had a call for the end of shame. You wrote that heartful message from father to son on why needing help does not make us weak.
Yeah,
that is compelling in itself. I think I'm a father. I have 3 sons. What father does not want to be an olive branch or a conduit for showing a bridge over troubled waters?
absolutely.
And I believe that you've got a lot of success in your life, which makes your story that much more important to tell. And for your children to look up at you and say, you know what, Dad, we understand. We might not have understood then, but as we get older, we understand now. So, I want to say to you also, Jim, that writing this, is it also therapeutic for you to be able to release what you've been through? As much as you're helping other people, is it also helping you?
Absolutely, I think so. I mean, I don't know how you could write, whether it's that piece like, you talked about. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your words very much. That piece about ending shame and guilt associated with addiction. My son Jim has an addiction to alcohol, and he's still battling that. It's a constant fight, and it is trying to end that shame and guilt associated with that is important to me, because I think people don't get help because they're ashamed of it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's very critical to talk about these things. Put light, I think, helps everything. And, shedding light on things. They talk about sunlight helps disinfect things and everything, right? So I mean, I think shedding light on things opens it up, and people can talk about it, and they feel more free to talk about it, and they're more likely to seek help. Because I don't know if any of you guys follow Tom Satterley. He wrote it's over here somewhere, actually, his book, All Secure. He was a Delta Force guy for like 25 plus years. And he writes about, he basically was sitting in his car with a gun to his head one day. And the woman who now is his wife called him and said, "Hey, where you at? We're going to go get drinks or something. You coming?" And he it kind of startled him out of what he was doing. And he put the gun down and joined her. And that was his journey out of the darkness from PTS that led him to that point. And he writes extensively about that. And he has a foundation now called the All Secure Foundation. And, again, the message of, if you don't talk about it, you don't get it out in the open, and people won't seek help. And especially guys like that, that were, so hardcore and tough, and, they don't want to look weak, right? By saying, "Hey, I need some help." But my God, you're going through that type of trauma every single day. You're going on a mission every night or something like that. I mean, so yes, I very much, I do think it helped me, to the point of your original, I get off on a tangent here, but to your original question, yes, I do think it helps me very much. I think anybody that writes about trauma like that, or writes their personal story, it does help you very much. And as you said, I really, another goal, I wanted to help that reader, but I also wanted to put some of these stories out, for my kids, for obviously you tell your kids stories, but some stories you don't want to tell them until they get older and things. And you want to make sure that it's out there so that they can read this at some point and understand the stories and learn from them.
Job well done, Jim.
Thank you.
And you're a brave man, Jim, for sharing and leaving yourself, call it vulnerable, by sharing some of those things. And I know you've talked about being we talked early in the show about being a lifelong learner. And I know that was part of the reason what likely led you to North Korea, is being a student of military history. It sounds like you continue to look at the past and try to learn from those experiences. So I'm curious, Jim, what books are you reading, and what places do you want to go?
Well, that's really interesting. I think, when you talk about places I want to go, I haven't been to Iran. I would really like to go to Iran. I don't know why, but I seem to want to go to places where people, don't like us. I don't know why that is. I think I know why. It's because I want to understand, why do people not like us? What is it about, why don't you like us? And what's the crux of the issue there? Because, it started, serving in Korea, in South Korea, serving in Germany, but, going into Russia, going into the Soviet Union during the Soviet Union days, I had this vision in my head growing up in the 70s in Chicago area, Cold War and all that stuff. I had this vision of, mom, the babushka and the old Russian lady and all that stuff. And what the Iron Curtain meant and all that stuff. And we get over there and you meet the people, and the people are people, people are people everywhere. North Korea, I was in North Korea, and sure, at certain perspectives, they look at you like they want to, rip your heart out with a knife. But, when I'm on which is one of the more surreal experiences, is you're on those people carriers like are at the airport, and I'm going in to go see Kim Il-sung's mausoleum, and you're on this people carrier, and you're going in kind of casual clothes, and everybody coming out is dressed like they're at a funeral, obviously. And, they're looking at you like you're disrespecting, basically, I think, they think he's a godlike figure. So, seeing that, but when you meet the people on the street, I shared the pictures on that thing, shooting with the little kids out on the street, shooting targets and stuff. I mean, they're people, people are people. Governments are what the problem are, right? Governments hate each other. People generally don't. So I think I've always had that, desire is to understand people. As I talked about my 3 tools, understanding, compassion, and forgiveness. Understanding has always been my fascination, trying to understand people, whether it's race right now, what is it that causes the disagreements on race? What are the real issues? How do we solve those issues? That type of stuff. It's always fascinated me. I have, when you talk about gay and straight, I have gay relatives that I love, and talking to them, and trying to understand that, why do people hate people just because they're gay? I mean, I don't, so trying to understand those different issues has always been fascinating to me.
No, that is exactly what it is, Jim. And, when you speak about, LGBTQ, you speak about the race issues, speak about even COVID-19, a lot of things will be, a lot of things in our society can be remedied as long as we are open to understanding each other. With the whole George Floyd thing, it's really, it's not the issue is not necessarily police. It's why we're being do that to a human being. That's the common thing that we need to get down to. And if race is a factor, then absolutely it has to be discussed. Not because he's black and the other guy is white, but because he felt that was okay.
The biggest question to me with that whole thing was, how does he see him not as a human being? Because he clearly didn't. I mean, that was, that's me trying to understand it, is what leads him to not feel that George Floyd wasn't a human being, because he treated him like an animal, and that's the crux of the issue, right?
Yep. And I don't want to take you away from our conversation, Jim, but I absolutely appreciate you addressing that, and something that I'm sure other episodes or maybe even another podcast, something we could talk about. But I really appreciate how you're transparent with your story. I think what's one of the fascinating things with me is that you are actually on a demarcation line in the DPK, man. You're actually standing where CNN has a camera fixed, it seems like now, right at that line between South Korea and North Korea. And kind of just backing up a little bit, I just want to know, like, what was that experience like, standing there, watching it from all angles? It seems you saw it, and just had to have the hair on your neck kind of stand up, I would believe, to be there.
It's really interesting. We had that. Do you remember the person from the North Korean military that was shot and killed? Well, he wasn't killed; he was shot badly, and they found all those worms in his intestines and everything like that. Yeah. When that happened, there were guys that popped out of buildings there that I was walking past. And I'm like, wow, so that's what was in that building. So coming, I told you I had been to Pam with John from the South, so I had seen it from the South, and it was years ago. They rebuilt the house and all that stuff on the South End. since I was there way back in 1984. So I had seen the DMZ in Parmesan and demarcation line from the south, but seeing it from the north was surreal. I mean, it was completely surreal. We saw the old on the north end. There's the old original site where the UN was meeting with the North Koreans and stuff, and you get to see that. And then you come into this building that, basically when I was in the military in the South, they were telling us that was just a bogus building. It wasn't even a real building. It was just a facade. It's a real building. So I was in it. Wow. So you can go into it, and it really was unreal. You walk down there and you see the Peace Village are set out, and you're seeing it from the other end, and you're seeing the South looking at you, and all the cameras are looking at you, and the U.S. and South Korean soldiers are looking at you. It was interesting, seeing all those eyes on you from the other side. It was very interesting.
Incredible. Well, Jim, we are running out of time, and you've shared a lot, which I know both Robert and I appreciate. And one more time regarding the book, tell us a little bit more about your plan for the release and where folks can look for it and get a glimpse into the fascinating life of Jim Miller.
Well, thank you very much. The book, Gut Punch, how love will pick you up when life drops you to your knees. And again, it's the story of, bringing yourself from a very traumatic place and finding your happiness, getting from getting from a place of anger, guilt, hatred, or shame, and finding your path toward your personal freedom. So I'm still in the editing phase. I have to turn the manuscript in. And once I turn the manuscript in, it's basically, they do their edits, and then I have to fix those edits. And once I fix their edits, it's 4 months from then where they publish it. So with COVID, I'm a little bit behind schedule. So we may not hit November. It'll probably be spring. But once it's out, it will be available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all that stuff. So it will be widely available. And I will be pushing it out on my social media and all that stuff. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, and we'll promote as well. By the way, Jim, as we're talking, I just had this memory of as I went through basic training. So I'm assuming all branches of the military have the, I think it's called the ASBP, the Armed Services Blood Program. And I remember I think it's volunteers come through, and it was one of the last days of basic training, and they tried to recruit us by offering us a T-shirt or something like that. Well, you donate blood. And because, to all those that are listening that think that we're not still at war, we are still very much at war. People are dying every day for our country. And when people don't donate blood, the military has to purchase that blood from Life Source and other resources, and it costs a pretty penny. So again, shameless plug, donate blood to those that are serving. But I remember the volunteer or whomever it was came through and did a little gaggle with us and was trying to basically weed out whomever would not qualify, and was asking questions like, where have you traveled to? And I remember going through different countries, and I said South Korea, and the guy laughed and made fun of me, and I'm cracking up at that right now. He was like, I didn't think you would have been to North Korea. You know what? You never know. But it was very funny. I'm just having that memory right now, and I guess who knows? But Jim, thank you so much. Anything that we've left out that you wanna plug or call out? Any shout outs?
No, Shalom and Robert, thank you again very much for inviting me on your show. I would just, as you said, we all serve. I mean, I would encourage anybody to join the military. I think it's a fantastic way to learn, who you are. You learn a lot about the world, learn a lot about our country, our values. The people that serve are some of the greatest people in our country. People that are willing to put their freedom and their life on the line for others. What greater cause than that? And I think it's it's not for everybody, but I think for folks that I would really encourage people to look at as an opportunity to learn who you are and learn more about the world.
Agreed. Jim, is wonderful and fascinating as your walk in life has been. I did have one other question, man. What's next for you?
Well, I'm still working full time and working on the book. And I would really like to take the book and do some webinar type things, workshops, and or coaching to try to help people, navigate that journey of trauma, living life, moving forward after traumatic incidents that happen in life. That's what I kind of see as my calling, my next phase of life, whenever that does happen. I would like to really move into that area and try to help people that way.
I see that happening, my brother. I see that happening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Indeed. And whatever you do, we will promote and share. So thank you again, Jim, for joining us. For those of you that tuned in, again, make sure you subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're using. Make sure you like and follow on Facebook and Twitter. Find out about our upcoming episodes. It's going to be pretty awesome. We've got some great guests in the works. We're on episode number 7, but a couple dozen guests already in the bullpen over here. So we're excited about that. And once again, Jim Miller, thank you so much for joining us. Agree with you. We all serve. And we will see you next time. We're excited to continue to excited for your book to come out. So thanks for joining us again.
Yes. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it very much. Enjoyed it. Take care.